Hello, I'm Liam and welcome to my 1st of October allotment tour. With all my tours, it's actually a review of what I've done in the month before. It covers the activities I got up to in September and a review of how the allotment is now. If you want to see what's in the video, in the description below, I've divided the video up into chapters, so that's the easiest way to see everything that it contains. And if you want to come back and rewatch a part of the video, that's the easiest way of doing it. If you like the video, please let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment. And for more allotment tips, please see my website. There'll be a link below the video. For more videos like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in the usual way. So let's take a look. I always like to start the tour inside the polytunnel, particularly so today because it's nice and warm inside. It's quite cold outside with a chilly wind. And the tomatoes are still doing really well. Now the plants are quite bushy, and that was deliberate on my part. Around August I stopped pruning them because I find that by doing that the plants continue to produce new trusses and I end up with loads and loads of tomatoes. So I prune early on in the season to get an early harvest, and then by letting them grow unpruned, I seem to get a continuous harvest which just goes on, and I'm hoping that I'll continue to get a harvest. Here's a really nice looking truss here. I hope I'll continue to get a harvest into the first part of October, although it is weather dependent. Some really nice larger tomatoes here. If it does get really cold at night and there are frosts, then that may spoil the flavour of the tomatoes. But it's been a great season and it's just lovely to continue to come down here and be able to pick some tomatoes. I have a few different types of tomatoes. I have these Sun Gold variety tomatoes here, which are my favourites. This tomato here is Premio, and over here too, they have been really good this year. I have got chocolate cherry. This may not come out so well on the camera, probably be easiest if I just pick one. These are a dark brown chocolate colour, hence the name. And this variety here, just touch it there, hope that's coming out well on the camera. That is Gardener's Delight. Cherry tomato. My cucumber plants at the end are now well past their best. They're ready for tidying up. I have noticed that one plant has continued to climb. This here is a cucumber plant that has really grown right up the tomato plant, but it doesn't appear to be in flower. Actually, I've just spotted there a cucumber I missed picking. So a really yellow cucumber which won't be any good to eat. I may come back and inspect the plant to see if I can find any small green cucumbers on it. This one I will just pick to remove from the plant and throw away. That's it there. Immediately outside the polytunnel I've got a part of the allotment which is really past its best. I have a large winter squash plant here which has provided me lots and lots of fruit, but now the leaves are curling, they've got some mould on, it's really past its best. I think I may have one fruit that is still left to pick. I've also got some asparagus growing up through the winter squash, and I'm going to dig that up and clear the space next to the polytunnel. What I hope to try next summer is cover the polytunnel with some shading, because I think the plants inside the polytunnel will prefer that. It will keep them cooler and I hope will lead to even bigger harvests. The row of raspberries is filling out, but in the spaces between the raspberries is where I planted the winter squash plant, and at the end here I planted some runner beans. Now my attempt to support the runner beans was a failure. The strong winds towards the end of August dealt a blow to that. I've still been picking the runner bean pods, but my lesson for next summer is I need to provide a much stronger support for the runner beans to stop them being blown over. And it won't be here because this row will be dedicated to raspberries. Next to the raspberries I have a Boysenberry plant which I've started to support. Again, I need to work on the supports to make them stronger. That will be a job I hope to do October, November time. And next to that I have my Loganberry and my Tayberry plants. This is quite a dangerous time of year for the plants because they're covered in leaves and the winds have started to blow strongly now. There is a risk they'll act like a sail, catch the wind and blow the supports over. It's been a long time since I harvested the fruits off the bushes inside the fruit cage. The bushes themselves are still covered in leaves. I'm waiting for the leaves to fall off and then I'll get inside the fruit cage and prune them. One of the things I need to work on, especially for the currants, I've got a black currant and a red currant bush, is to reduce the number of stems and train them to have an upright habit because the branches, when they were covered in fruit, were starting to sag. And I didn't like the fruit sagging onto the ground. Sometimes a plant just loves where it's positioned, and I found this with these dahlias. I've got a couple of plants here which are almost shoulder height and they're still covered in flowers. I've been really enjoying picking the flowers and taking them home. I'll try and zoom in to get a better look at the flowers. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. I've been growing this variety of dahlia for a few years now. I will dig up the tubers to grow them again next year, but because this variety has been so successful, I'm tempted to have another go and maybe dedicate as much as a whole bed to the dahlias. It's been a real treat to have these at home in vases. I planted the dahlias because at the time my rhubarb plant, which was freshly planted this winter, was quite small. But now the rhubarb plant is a really large size. I'm very happy with that. When the cold weather comes and the leaves die back, I'll cover the rhubarb crown with a really rich mulch. And hopefully February, March time next year, I'll be able to harvest lots and lots of stems. The strawberry bed, since I covered it with a steel mesh, has been a big success, but now the plants are no longer producing flowers and it's been a few weeks since I had my last harvest from them. And the other side is the most successful plant of the summer, this winter squash, a variety called Crown Prince. There's a couple of fruits still on the plant, but really the plant is almost dead now. It's been a tremendous success. I'm just waiting for it to die back a little more and then I'll clear it away. And next to that I have my apple tree, and I'm pleased to say I have had my first ever harvest from this tree, even though it was planted about March time earlier this year. It's now the 20th of September and I'm gonna have another go at trying to pick one of these apples. Give it a little twist. Oh, and that's come off nicely. That looks a good looking apple to me. Looking forward to taking it home and trying it. Next to the winter squash is where I had a couple of rows of potatoes. The first one I've dug up and left for the next planting. The second one here, I'll just step back, is where I've planted some vegetables for the autumn and hopefully for early spring too. It's a sowing of radish and perpetual spinach. Today is the 7th of September and I'm going to be planting some winter vegetables in the bed that recently contained my potatoes. A couple of days ago I came down to the plot and dug the potatoes up. I'm really pleased with the harvest I was able to get from this bed. So I've dug it over, levelled it, made sure that all the weeds are removed, and now it's ready for planting. to plant the seed, I cut channels in the weed control fabric. I'll create a furrow in the channel with a hand trowel, and then I like to water the furrow, make sure the soil is nice and damp, plant the seed, and then loosely cover the seed with a fine covering of soil. The fleece is a really light fabric and provides protection from any chilly winds and early frosts. If I just take a look under the fleece which is protecting the plants to see how they're doing, the fleece helped with germination. Just here I have the Perpetual spinach. It hasn't developed its true leaves yet, but the plants are a reasonable size, and next to that, right in the middle, is a row of 2 different kinds of radish, which I'm really looking forward to using in stir fries. And then the third row over there is another row of Perpetual spinach. When the plants are a little larger and have become established, then I'll start thinning them out. Alongside the winter vegetables, I have my courgette plants. Now the courgette plants are well past their bed. They're covered in mould, the leaves aren't really looking very good at all, but I am able to pick every now and then a few courgettes off them. So I have some down here. I'll just give these a twist. That's a little on the large side. Another one here. That's a bit better. And I think I've spied some over here too, or at least one more. I'm pleased with that one, almost the perfect size. I almost didn't plant courgettes this year. It was a last minute thing when I realised I had room for them. I had one bed free, and I'm really pleased I did, because the courgette plants rapidly became established and I've had really big harvests from them. Really enjoyed eating them. Quite a few meals of Spanish pesto. Further along from the courgette plants, I have some cabbage and some broccoli. Now, even though I've got a butterfly net over these plants at the front, which are a variety of cabbage, they have been eaten. I am a little bit disappointed about that. And that plant over there is looking a little leggy. It's got quite a tall stem with the leaves on top, almost like a tree, rather than that plant over there where the leaves are forming closer to the ground. But I'm still hopeful, maybe after a little bit of cold weather that will stop the insects getting to them, that they'll recover. The broccoli plants at the end of the bed are actually growing quite tall. I hope the camera is showing this well, perhaps a couple of feet high. And when I have time, I'll come down here and stake them and tie the plants to the stake and increase the height of the netting so it doesn't interfere with the growth of the plants. The reason why they need to be staked is that a strong wind will blow them over. They're quite a leafy plant, and even though they have thick stems, a strong wind will blow them over. And then hopefully I can just leave them be until March, April time, when I hope it's a purple sprouting variety of broccoli. And in March, April, I hope I'll be harvesting lots of heads. To the right of my courgettes I have the leeks. The leeks are forming really nicely now. I've planted these leeks to enjoy them March, April time, all being well. I'm really pleased with how they're looking. They are well established now, and best of all, from my perspective, for what I'm looking to do, is that the plants aren't too big. I want them to continue growing. They'll grow quite slowly because of the weather in September, October, and probably almost stop altogether in the coldest months. But by early spring they should have another growth, and at that point I hope the stems will be really thick and I'll be able to make delicious soups with them. Moving up from the leek bed is my parsnip bed. The parsnips are looking really good, very green. I haven't dug any of the parsnips up yet. I was told soon after getting my first allotment that parsnips taste at their best after the first frost. That helps sweeten them, so that's what I'm waiting for. Perhaps October, or sometimes winters here it can be as late as December, but then I'll start harvesting the parsnips. I really like to roast them, and I also think they make a delicious ingredient in soups. I hope to try making a winter squash and parsnip soup. I think that'll be a really delicious combination. To the right side of the parsnip bed, I have my New Zealand spinach bed that also contains chard and beetroot. I think some of the chard plants are looking quite beautiful at the moment. This red variety here, and this green variety next to it. Compared to earlier in the year, in July, a lot of the leaves were being eaten, but now, because the weather has changed and maybe wildlife is taking care of some of the slugs and snails, the leaves are more untouched, and they're actually in much better condition than they were a couple of months ago. They've been providing a harvest for about 3 or 4 months now. The winter spinach itself, the 4 plants I have here are very large, but the colour of the leaves has started to yellow, and really they're past their best. But overall, if I just come here the other side to show, when the leaves are green like this in good condition, they have been absolutely delicious. I've really enjoyed eating those. And walking down from the New Zealand spinach bed, I have a bed that has been filled with kale, cauliflower and cabbage. Now the kale has provided a harvest from April, May time, and is still going strong now. I just wish it tasted nicer, to be honest, because it's a tremendous grower, and if it was a little less chewy, the plants on the allotment would be covered with less leaves because I'd have eaten them. But a few leaves added to a stir fry is a good boost of nutrients, and I think a good use of the kale leaves. I've already harvested the cauliflower out of this bed. Of 5 plants, I ended up with 3 that produced good sized heads, 1 absolutely enormous head, so that I think counts as a success. I've just noticed in the cauliflower bed that one of the cauliflowers has reached a really good size, so I'm going to have a go picking it now. And this is the cauliflower. I'm going to turn it over to have a look. That is looking really, really good. Well, there's a caterpillar there as well. Caterpillar there, just there. I'm going to rip off the leaves, give it a good shake, and then take a look at it. And here it is, one big cauliflower head ready for taking home. It does have a few green things on it, so I'm going to give it a really good wash, make sure that those come off it. But overall, I'm very happy with the size of that. That's a good one. And at the end here, I have 2 cabbage plants that are starting to form a heart-shaped head. The leaves are in much better condition to the cabbage I showed earlier. These plants are a little bit older, and again these plants were quite heavily attacked by either slugs or snails a couple of months ago, but now they're less of a problem. The plants have recovered, and I'm hopeful that they'll produce quite a good harvest, perhaps in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Alongside this brassica bed, I had 2 more beds of potatoes. I've dug up the potatoes, and these beds here I'm planning to sow my garlic in. I do like growing my own garlic. This year I'm going to try planting the bulbs I grew this summer to provide next year's harvest. My blueberry bushes at the end of the allotment is really the one zone that I have prepared properly for next summer. I've covered the ground surrounding the bushes with these wood chippings, which really help suppress weeds and will stop the ground cover fabric beneath, which holds the weeds back, from being degraded by the sun, so it stops holes forming in the fabric, and also it looks good too, to be honest. And then around the base of the bushes I've applied a really thick mulch, and the mulch I've used is the homemade compost, a mixture of manure and compost that I made using my hot compost bin at home. I find it's always satisfying to use my homemade compost. And then the leaves themselves of the blueberry bushes, well, at this time of year they are spectacular. They will turn even more spectacular. There's still quite a large amount of greenery on these leaves, but hopefully the camera is showing this. When the leaves do turn, they're a spectacular orange and red colour. It's one of my favourite colours of autumn. And that's it. So to recap, at the end of my allotment I have these blueberry bushes. To the left of the blueberry bushes I have 2 beds that used to have my potatoes, which are now in storage. Further along from the old potato beds is my brassica bed, and up from that is my New Zealand spinach bed. Next to those 2 beds I have my leeks and my parsnips, so 2 crops I'm really looking forward to enjoying in the winter months. To the left of that are my courgette plants, which are probably only a week or 2 away from ending in terms of harvest. And up from that, some more cabbage and my broccoli plants. Alongside these beds I have my old potato bed, which I'll cover to be ready for next spring, and my autumn and winter vegetables, the perpetual spinach and radish. And alongside those beds I have my strawberries, and further up from the strawberries the winter squash plant that has died back, and my apple tree, and if I just pan around from the apple tree, my rhubarb plant and the dahlias. Next to the dahlias I have my fruit cage. I'm just waiting for the plants to lose their leaves so I can get in and prune. And the other side of the fruit cage I have my hybrid berries, the Tayberry, Loganberry and Boysenberry, which I need to find a solution for the new supports. And next to the row of hybrid berries I have my row of raspberries, which also contains another winter squash, and my runner beans, again that I need to work on the supports for next year. Just next to the polytunnel I have the ground covered by a winter squash plant and the asparagus, both of which I need to clear. And that leaves the polytunnel, which is full of tomatoes, and that's the job I'm going to do right now, to pick some tomatoes to bring them home for lunch. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button. After subscribing, click the bell to ensure you are notified every time a new video is added.